It is March 18th. It's the third Wednesday of March 2020. It's 6 p.m., actually 6:01 Pacific time, which means it's time for the Freedom Call. The Unshackled Owner Freedom Call, which was the original name of this thing. And the Freedom Call was designed and continues to be my effort to try to help business owners of whatever size to be ready to be ready, to be ready to grow, to be ready to pivot, to be ready to scale up, to be ready to make hard decisions at hard times. And as everyone knows, this is it's usually relatively short, 30, 40 minutes. I will spend a little time talking about what's on my mind. And then at the end, I'll open it up for Q&A if anyone has questions. I actually may have, I don't know, I may ask you at least once during this a question where I hopefully you'll jump in. But I really want to kind of tell you what's on my mind, and then we'll get down to this, the questions. Little housekeeping first. As many of you may be aware, if you were planning to attend the Magnify Your Wealth Summit, April 30 days has September, yeah, April 30th, May 1st and 2nd, we've postponed, along with everything else out there, we've postponed to the middle of June, or I think it's the weekend of June 10th. Now, Megan's on here right now, and she's probably going to say, it's not official, but I want you to know we've secured dates in June for Magnify Your Wealth. And it's going to be fabulous. And because every speaker in the world is not speaking right now, they're calling me going, are you doing an event? And can I speak at your, we're going to have such a great event when we do it. And I'm really looking forward to having a really, oh, Megan says it's official. So it's the Thursday, Friday. Megan, put the dates in the chat, would you? Put the dates in the chat. Anyway, so that's postponed but not canceled, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be fabulous, and we're going to do something. It's June 12th, 13th, and 14th, which is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And as is typical, we're going to put our special guest speaker and several of our most wonderful talks at the end. So please, if you go to fly out on Sunday, don't fly out till the evening, because you're going to want to be there all the way up to 4 o'clock in the evening. So that's coming up, but it is changed. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to the office and talk to people there. That's the primary thing that I wanted to talk about from a housekeeping perspective. Now, having said that, I went to the store a little while ago, a little earlier today. I left the office here and drove over to Safeway and just wanted to get some little snacky stuff that I like to keep around here in the kitchen here at my office. And as I walked by that crazy ghost town of an aisle that says toilet tissue on it or bathroom tissue, and I saw the emptiness of the shelves, utter emptiness. And somebody had taken like boxes of Kleenex and put them up there, facial tissue to use on your bum. And I thought, isn't that interesting? They're moving Kleenex here to just put something in place. And I thought about it and I thought, isn't that interesting? It's empty again. It's empty again. And that took my mind off to another place. You remember when you were a kid and you'd be in bed and you're sure, you're like laying there with your eyes closed and you're sure there's someone looking down on you, and maybe it's a monster, or there's a monster under the bed, or there's something terrible, a ghost in the closet. Do you remember that? Remember that feeling, how scary it was? And you really felt it. You felt legitimate fear of that thing. You were young. You didn't have a lot of experience. You didn't know a lot. And so things that looked uncomfortable, dark, you couldn't see them, you couldn't fully interpret them, were scary. And then you grew up and you got comfortable looking in the closet, you got comfortable looking under the bed, and you knew there was no monster under the bed, but you got older and you got maybe worried about financial things. You got worried about grades. You got worried about, will I get into the school I want to go to? Will I meet the life partner that I want? Everything was fearful. What if I don't get the job? What if I can't pay my bills? What if, all that. And there were all these fears, and you felt them for real. They were real fears, and you were feeling them. And somehow every year just goes by, and then you get older and you live life. Maybe you're old now. Maybe you're in your 80s or something. And you think, none of this stuff really scares me anymore. I've seen it all. I've watched all kinds of things happen. But then instead of being afraid of financial issues or housing issues, or maybe even not even being afraid of death, but you look around at all these young people coming up and you think, oh my gosh, these people, these kids, they don't know what they're doing. And look, they're going to mess up everything we've built. Everything we've worked for is going to get wiped out because these young kids are coming up and they don't know all the things that we know. So no matter what in life, whether you're scared of the monster under the bed, scared of day-to-day stuff, or scared that what you've created will not be appreciated or sustained because of the youngsters coming up, it's all the same thing. It's fear of things we don't really know much about, fear of things we haven't fully experienced. I can't help but think back on pre-prison for me, pre-prison. I think everybody on this call knows I went to prison. And I knew that the cell was supposed to be 8 feet by 12 feet, 8 feet wide by 12 feet deep. I knew that. It ended up being only 8 feet wide for part of it, and then it went down to 7 feet. So a little bit smaller than I thought. But for months, once I knew we were going to settle and we were going to deal with it and we were going to end up going to prison, everywhere I'd go, I would start pacing off 8 by 12 and trying to get spatially in my mind the size of the place I might be housed. I paced it off at malls and in parking lots. And I remember doing it at the movie theater one time in the lobby. I don't think anybody else knew what I was doing, but I did it. And I was sort of building the cell around me as I was there. I wasn't in prison yet, but I was already mentally going to the prison. I was already mentally engaged in the prison. And I remember in retrospect, well, even along the way, I started going, this is nuts, Aaron, what are you doing? I still felt compelled to do it. I couldn't do anything else. I had no control over what was happening to me. And so I at least thought, well, I can get a concept of spatially how much room I'll have when I'm in a cell. Michelle has been teaching, my wife, Michelle, has been teaching on some Facebook Lives and so on. She just did a great one on something called structure loss. I think it was earlier today. Structure loss means basically when things that we're used to having be normal, all of a sudden get changed. We lose our job, we get divorced, we get ill, or maybe we lose a limb, maybe our parent dies. But the things that were constant all of a sudden go, we have structure loss. And in that vacuum where we don't really know what to do or how to interpret our new normal, as we keep talking about, we fill the void with terrifying things. We start imagining the monster under the bed, the ghost in the closet. We start to do it. Seth Godin, who's such a great guy, says that worrying about those things, worry is the act. Now, listen to these words exactly. Worry is the act of experiencing fear repeatedly in your head before it ever happens. It's the act of experiencing fear repeatedly in your mind, in your head, before the thing you're afraid of even happens, right? That's what I was doing. I was moving into prison before I was even in prison. I promise you guys that my imagined experience in prison was dramatically worse than the reality of being in prison. Dramatically worse than actually being in prison. And it really has led me to think a lot about that. So right now we're going through structure loss. And it's not all imagined, because some people really are sick. Some people really have died. Some people have really lost their jobs, and many people fear losing their job or if amongst business owners, entrepreneurs, losing our clients amidst the panicking. In structure loss, people don't know what to do, so they do something crazy, like buy up all the toilet paper. That's insane. It's insane. It's not that there won't be more toilet paper. It's just that we're hoarding stuff. The government's saying you don't need to hoard it. The supply chain will last. And yet people do it. And yet people do it. And they build that fear. I want to read something. I had to copy this down so I could read it to you. But his first inaugural address, the only president to have 3 inaugural addresses, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was elected at the depths of the Depression, right? The Great Depression. He was elected. Herbert Hoover was sort of blamed for the Depression, for letting the stock market and other elements get out of control. And there was this big crash, and the people wanted something different, and they hired a guy named Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he got up at the beginning, within about, I think it was in the second paragraph of his inaugural speech. And he said these words, and I want you guys to really listen to this and think about what's going on right now around us, okay? He said, "This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive, will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Hold on, time out. You guys all know that part. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. But let me read you what President Roosevelt said to just complete that sentence. I'm going to step right back. So first, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Is that amazing? Do those words ring so true to your entrepreneurial spirit right this minute? Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. I wanted just the quote. I wanted to make sure I knew when it was from. And when I saw the rest of the sentence, I thought, why in the world do they not teach us that whole thing? Because the power is in saying, when you say there is nothing to be afraid of, get over it. People go, oh, really? Well, maybe you're not afraid, but I'm afraid. But when we look at it and say, the imagined fear, the ghost in the closet, the monster under the bed, the feared size of the cell is much more terrifying than the actual thing that's going on. The reality is, right now with this coronavirus, mostly not that much is happening about the coronavirus that affects any of us here. As far as the illness, it's the sweeping actions being put in place to reduce the spread of it that are putting pressure on business and now subsequently pressure on government to slow the explosion so we don't overwhelm the hospitals with that tiny percentage of truly at-risk people that we just don't have enough beds for. So it's good that we're what do they keep calling it? Blunting the curve, flattening the curve to slow the demand on the hospitals. But really, for the most part, we're talking about, I don't know what, 1,000th of 1% of the people in the country have actually got an illness or have died. I mean, it's almost everybody's getting better. And I'm not trying to be cavalier. I'm just saying the coronavirus, I think people somehow think if they get it, they're going to die, which is just not true. And even if you know logically, I had somebody, I mentioned to somebody yesterday that I do know somebody who the doctor said they haven't got test results, but the doctor said, yeah, you probably have coronavirus. And those people are okay. They have a little cold. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, they said, yeah, we had a little fever, little sweats, went to the doctor, they got tested, they put them in the hospital, they let them out. They're in a house for a couple of weeks going through the quarantine period. They're okay. Most people are going to be okay. This freaking out, unreasonable panic shopping, going insane, that's going to cause problems. Doing knee-jerk reactions are going to cause bigger problems. Like FDR talked about the run on the bank, running on the bank and taking all the cash out, going to the store and taking all the toilet paper out creates a bigger problem than the actual problem. And it's all because of the fear, the imagined monster under the bed. So I want to take a cue from my brilliant wife, and I want to ask you guys, what good might come from this experience? What good thing might manifest? What can you do in your circumstance to look around and say, okay, worst case scenario, I lose my job. Worst case scenario, I get sick. Go to the worst case scenario for you, not for others. Just place it. Go to the worst case scenario for you, and then think, if that's the worst case scenario, then what would I do? What would be my next move? What would be the next right thing to do in that situation? Because here's what as I feared the government, as much money, millions of dollars that we spent in legal fees, fearing, once we were sentenced, fearing going in to the prison, then being in the prison and being in a very unfamiliar situation. All of that was true. We had the fight, we had the embarrassment, we had the money, we had the everything we did to react to it. And now 13 years later, I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. I have a family, I have a home, we have a business, we have all these things. Got out of prison a year later, the whole economy crashed. We were this close to having all the banks fail. It could have been a much worse circumstance than we're in right now. But yet, 12 years later, we're still here. We're just have seen the reverse of the greatest boom in American history. But you know what? We're still alive. We're still breathing. We're still showing up. So as long as we're alive and breathing and waking up every day and having to deal with something, I'm inviting you guys. I'm inviting you to join me in thinking about, okay, so this is the experience that we're dealing with now. Instead of pretending it's not happening, instead of trying to say, well, 2 weeks from now, this is all over, or this is stupid, which I've been saying a lot. This is insane. It's insane. But it doesn't help anything to say that. The only thing that helps is to say, okay, so dispassionately, this is the circumstance right now. What is possible? What can I do to, without freaking out, what can I do to both be better prepared and to find a different angle to do work that I do, to do the thing, to offer the service that I provide, to address a different customer than maybe I've addressed before, to come up with a different presentation of what you're all about than before, so it answers certain questions. It is going to be tough. We're going to have a little bit more challenging fiscal time for a short period of time. Even worst case scenario, let's say it was 18 months, which I've seen, worst case scenario, we could be dealing with the virus, not with sheltering in place and everything, but we could be dealing with the virus for another 18 months. It'll go and it may come back, and maybe vaccine, maybe not. My point is, what can we do? Because odds are everybody that's listening to my voice right now will still be alive during whatever the evolution of this thing is. So we can't just sit there and wring our hands and cry. What are we going to do? Because when we allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear, rather than looking for the opportunity in a new situation, then we miss being at the front of the wave of opportunity. Everybody's talking about how the stock market has crashed so badly. True, it has. All the gains of the last 3 years during the Trump administration that he's been touting have been washed as of today. We're back to where we were. And people are, I don't even want to look at my 401k. I don't even want to look at my IRA. Can I tell you something, folks? The stock market crashing means stocks were selling for $10 and now they're selling for $5. We had a 50% crash, right? That still means somebody bought all those shares at the discounted price. Somebody bought all those shares in the big crash that we've seen over the last several days. Somebody bought all those shares. And while those that sold away from things, they're out, guess what? Those that bought will be able to experience the rebirth of the regrowth of the stock market. Somebody's getting rich by looking at the positive rather than the negative. Most rich people and most huge institutions would rather have you look at the scary stuff so that those that are better prepared can take advantage of fire sale prices. So rather than sitting here saying, I'm getting wiped out, I'm getting screwed, what am I going to do? I'm begging you guys, let's all put our heads together and figure out what good can each one of us find in this experience, not just philosophically good, financially good. What can we do to rethink how we engage the market, to rethink how we brand our special secret, how to find a different customer, or how we engage in a different way? If we can't sell a $10,000 product anymore, sell a $100 product. What is it people are seeking? What are they desperate for? How can we help them? I think about the mistakes that are going to be made. And, we're in the asset protection business. We're in the tax reduction business at Laughlin, but mostly asset protection. I worry that people will abandon things that they've set up right at the time when they probably ought to be doubling down on getting things really well organized. Because if this goes on for a while and you had some sort of financial, a bankruptcy or closing a business or something, you definitely don't want that stuff in your name. You want to get things moved around so that you don't sink with the ship. But right now, people are so fearful, they're not thinking about what might happen. I'll tell you what, from an asset protection standpoint, we were talking about this today. There are going to be so many lawsuits. Once everybody quits being nice and friendly, right now there's a little bit of a a community spirit where we're trying to support each other and try to keep our distance and not touch anything, not shake hands or hug, but we want to be good to each other. We're trying to look out for our neighbors, which is fabulous. But I believe as we start getting really into a desperate place, there are going to be lawsuits. There's going to be problems. There's going to be business failures. There's going to be real trouble. This is the perfect time to, in our company, to have our clients protected. What is it in your business that maybe people aren't thinking about that you can do for them that will protect them getting through this, that will inspire them, that will create new revenue streams, that will provide new products? What can you do to solve a problem for people? Because when we're afraid, we're looking for somebody who has a solution. I want all of you guys and me, I want all of us to be ones finding solutions so that we help people get over the terror, and we start giving them, let's start, Todd. Sorry, Todd's saying, yeah, let's sue China. I don't know, I can look here. In a minute, I'm just gonna come back and read your notes, okay? Here's my point. I'm saying this is a phony situation. I'm not saying it's made up. I'm not saying it's not happening for real. What I'm saying is, really, the percentage of people who are dramatically physically affected by the coronavirus is very small. The people who are going to be financially affected by the work we have to do to control the coronavirus is going to be very large. Most employees will be at tremendous risk because it'll be up to their employer what they do with those people. As entrepreneurs, we can either go, oh no, we're going to lose all our clients, or we can go, okay, I've got to be clever now. I've got to be visionary. I've got to think of what can I do to stay relevant and stay useful to the market. Because as long as they may go, I don't need your old thing, but I need something over here. How will you provide that? What will you do? Now, let me read a few of your notes real quick, because I want you guys to think about, I want you to think about what it is you're afraid of, and let's talk about it, see if we can try to allay any of those fears. Cameron says, worrying is like paying interest on a debt you may not owe. I love that. Thank you very much. Todd says, yeah, we're afraid of the unknown. We're always afraid of things we can't see. Once we go through it, some of you have heard me tell the story of me going, I reported to prison and I went to the detention center, and I'm in that cell with two other guys 19 and a half hours a day. And that first month was progressing. And of course, they don't tell you anything, but there were rumors going on that there was going to be a bunch of people leaving the minimum security, and I'd be able to probably move pretty soon, which actually is what happened. But in the visiting room, in what ended up only being a few days before I moved, I told my wife, I told Michelle, they say that I might move over to the camp pretty soon. And she's like, oh, isn't that great? Don't you feel good about that? And I have to admit, I said, I don't know. I've figured out how to live here. I figured out how to do this. And I don't know what it's like over there. And I'm a little nervous to move. Now, my gosh, it was so much better over there. It was not even night and day. It's like a different planet. But yet I'd learned how to deal with the thing that I was in, even though it was crappy. I'd learned how to do it. And I was still afraid of the unknown, even though it was so much better. The unknown is always scary, and we always fill a void with the worst case scenario, unless we are intentional about our thinking and we don't allow it. When we get afraid, I learned a great thing probably from my wife. I've been doing some of these things for a long time, but she says things sometimes that are so brilliant. And then I go, oh, I'm going to adopt that. One thing she said was, you have these different inner child, the adult, the parent in our psychology or in our psyche. And she said, sometimes laying in bed at night when you get scared, your mind starts running on the thing you're scared of. And our adult has to say to that inner child that's terrified, hey, guess what? That's real, and we will deal with it in the morning. We can't do anything about it tonight, so I'm going to make a note, and I promise you, inner child, we will deal with this, and we will fix this in the morning. And ever since I heard her teach that principle and I started doing that when my mind started to race, guess what? I fall right to sleep. Pretty amazing. We can influence our minds for good, but it takes a lot more effort to focus on positive outcomes than to allow ourselves to fall into the depths of despair. Cameron also says, but it's new and unknown, so extra scary. Amen. It is extra scary. Flu kills 80,000 people every year with no press. Yes. Yes. Nobody runs and buys up all the toilet paper because your neighbor got the flu. Yes, this is more aggressive than the flu. Yes, the morbidity rate is higher than the flu, 10 times higher than the flu. So instead of what is it? 1/10 of 1%, it's 1% in this. 1%. That means 99% of people 50 or younger, 99% of them are going to have little or no symptoms at all, or they're going to get a flu or a cold and they're going to be fine. And then they're not going to get it again. They're going to have immunity to it. There are going to be a percentage of people, 20%, that are going to they're going to feel pretty crappy. And some of them may have to go to the hospital. And 1% on average, I know if you're much older or you have immune problems or you've got lung problems, worse. But on average, let's say 1% are going to die. And that sucks. And we need to get that number way down. And we need to, and 1% of some big chunk of 320 million people is more than the medical facilities can bear. It's real, but we're much more afraid of it than the actual reality of what physically will happen to us. Our fear will drive worse results, just like those runs on the bank to yank out your money caused more problems for the economy than the actual economic problem. Our fears, if we let them go unchecked, we will make dumb decisions. We will make rash actions. We will get mean to other people. We will hoard stuff. We will create bigger problems than if we step back and dispassionately say, okay, here we are. What can we do? Here we are. What can I do with the resources that I have, with the knowledge in this head, with my team, with my sphere? What can I do to be not even just good, but useful, valuable, so that people continue to come to me to solve a problem? This is a big deal. Let me read what else. Aaron, we've been through several of these as well. As we get older, we've gone through a number of these things. The reality is there's opportunity like no other, for sure. I agree. The hardest part is to stop going, what I'm used to doing isn't going to work. That part's hard. But if you step back and go, okay, well, I have all this stuff. I have all these resources. How can I use them in a new way, an inventive way, to be reasonable? I mean, to be profitable and valuable. There's a very sweet comment on here about how because we see each other mostly at events, we won't see each other for a little while. Progress always involves risk. You can't steal second base with your foot on first base. Frederick B. Wilcox, thank you. Sean says, I had a doctor appointment today online. The doc was improvising to keep things running and it was pretty smooth. Yeah, teledocs, right? Getting on the phone with remote healthcare and getting our help. This way we can get access to medical help instead of going into the doctor. The doctors they're making a choice to do it a little differently and staying useful, valuable to their clients. If they don't do it, you'll find another doctor who will help you get what you want. So pop up as the one that's doing what people want. They don't want to go out there and mix it up and be around a bunch of other sick people. Get them on a phone, get them on a Zoom call. Our business is actually up as a result of this health crisis. Lots of people are telling us that the universe is telling me it's time to start my podcast. That's either Tom or Tracy Hazard. There are businesses that are going up. I'm not trying to be crass, guys, but right now, if you're in a position to look at your asset protection strategy, set up a Rockefeller, do all kinds of stuff. If you're in that position, before you get into financial crisis, this is the time to get those pieces separated from you so that if the ship sinks, you don't go down with the ship. You don't end up with ruined credit. You don't end up not being able to start back in a pretty strong position. Anyway, here's, oh wait, there's one more Q&A over here. Let me see. Are you considering doing a virtual event between now and the June event? Ron, the answer is, first of all, I've been invited to do several virtual events. So I'll be doing that with some other people. And the answer is kind of. So let me tell you as we wrap up, and then I'll take your questions and comments. But I want to tell you something. One is, and again, I don't want you to think I'm trying to be self-serving. I'm just telling you, now is not the time to eliminate your asset protection strategies. Now is the time to make sure they're intact and they're properly organized so that you can be separate from the thing that may or may not make it through this slowdown period. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But the project can fail without you going down with the ship if you're properly organized. That's one. Two, we have been at Laughlin, we have been spending time every single day putting together a series of webinar ideas that we're just going to start coming. And I don't know if we're going to do them as a webinar or we're going to do them as Facebook Lives, but we're going to start coming out right away with regular tips and tools of how to do different things in your business, how to take advantage of this circumstance, how to plug into available resources, how to become aware and make others aware of what you do, what they do, how you might work together, how we might come together as a Laughlin family, as a Freedom Call, Inner Circle, Magnify Your Wealth, Unshackled Owner family, so that we can help each other. As a matter of fact, we've set up a new Facebook group. We just are calling it Laughlin, just Laughlin Community. Laughlin Community. You can go to Facebook now and jump on, and that's where we're going to be putting announcements for these things. And we want people to step up and say, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's what I'm looking for, here's things, resources or ideas or skill sets I have, and see how we can maybe find new ways of creating new affiliations, new opportunities, new wealth creation, improve our situation. Todd Silverstein just wrote in here, which is a perfect thing as I looked over at my notes, at the chat, what I just was talking about, how we can all work together as a group. He says, make sure your boat is sound and floatable because the rising tide lifts all boats. This tide will change, just like the tide does all the time and never stops. Be set and in place and be ready to rise with the tide with eyes wide open so you can see all the opportunity that will be around you. This is, Todd, perfect summation for this class. It's human nature to get afraid when we don't know what's going on, when we don't know what's just out of sight in the closet, under the bed, in the dark. We don't know what it is, so we fear it. We can begin to turn lights on by saying, okay, what is our worst case scenario? And if the worst case scenario happens, then what do I do? And once you go, oh, I have a plan B for if the worst case scenario happens, guess what? You're going to immediately relax. When you are part of a community, and in this community, we've got brilliant people on the call right now, live, right now, fabulous, intelligent, competent people from all business life, all kinds of different things. When we will show up for each other and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I know how to do, Here's, I have time to do this. This is some stuff I could offer. Don't do it to sell. Don't go buy my course. I'm saying, say, here's who I am and here's what I know how to do. And here's competency I have or resources I have. And let's see, I don't know what will happen. It's an experiment. Let's see how we might find new ways of making money by staying relevant, by staying available, by being known, by working together to pivot in ways or reimagine things in ways that we hadn't had to do before when things were going well. Let's do that. I have look at guys, as you've heard me maybe say before, I remember Black Monday. I remember the .com crash. I remember the real estate crash. I remember prison. I certainly remember coronavirus. I remember the Vietnam War. I remember taking out my large intestine. I remember being all of a sudden having terrible pain and going in there saying, you're on the verge of a fatal heart attack that you will not recover from. I remember all that stuff. And folks, I'm still here. We're all still here. We're all still here. And we'll still be here in 3 months. We'll still be here in 6 months. Let's find ways of finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And you don't get a rainbow without clouds. You don't get a rainbow without the storm that was just in the air. You don't get it. You get the rainbow because it's the result of getting to the end of the storm. Let's see if we can speed that up by working together. I promise you that we will keep coming at you with helpful stuff. I know a lot of people are, but I'm just not going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to do it, and I'll bring my best people, the best people I know, to try to give you things that are inspiring without trying to sell anything. We're going to help each other through this because we all have huge stuff that's not very far out there on the horizon, where, as Todd said, all of our boats are going to rise back up together. I believe that with all my heart. And I think that's a good place to end the message tonight.